Joyce, would you like to actually share something? You can unmute yourself and share if you wish to, or if you would like to put it in the chat, it's okay as well. Okay? But as it is, I also did one session with another group, the two groups, feeling sad, the two groups, and started thinking that number one, I should explore my dream role outside, whatever dream role that may be. The second one, disheartened, but unfortunately have to accept it. Life goes on as normal, isn't it? BAU, what they call business as usual. But the seed of being unhappy has already been sown. So sadly, both these feelings actually would lead to unhappiness eventually. Because when they are actually feeling sad, they are actually going to be disengaged from the team, from the organization, for whatever they are doing eventually, and potentially lead to staff turnover because potentially they thought that they can actually get a similar role outside, right? So really, what has gone wrong? Where has it gone wrong? And I've came to this conclusion: the design of the process and system within organizations have really gotten this wrong. Let me explain a little bit. How many of you would probably attest to this? I did. I know I did. I actually, after having this conversation with Sonia, I actually went through my cabinets. I actually went through my file, and lo and behold, you know what I've gotten? A stack of printouts, A4 size, because it's no longer in hard, those hard paper, hardcover certificates. Now it's the option to print it if you want, or PDF it if you want, and tick in the boxes and things like that. There's no follow-through action. And that's what I had. A stack of certificates printed out that I have done this in the course of many years. But then I reflect back, what have I gotten from these? And I really resonate with Sonia on that day when I felt that there wasn't any follow through in all this learning and development that individuals would have gone through in the organizations. There's no follow through. Were there discussions with the manager? Would the manager come down and spoken to each individual staff and say, what have you done with regards to this and all? Rather than just a tick in the LMS, the learning management systems, and the fact that I have completed the learning. It stopped there most of the time. And obviously, as probably most of us would probably be able to attest as well, in the IT, in consulting world, in sales, for example, or in many other circumstances, we are hired for 100% delivery of our current role. If I'm a project manager, 100% of my time is to deliver projects. If I'm a programmer, 100% of my time is to ensure that I deliver the programs, the modules to my clients, right? For whatever role that we are hired, 100% of the time needs to be going into that. Especially in the consulting world, if you have been in consulting world, ultimately, what happens is that it's billable hours to the clients, maybe 50% of the time to this client and 50% of the time to that client. And if you utilize and you've clocked less than 100%, then questions will come. What were you doing here? What were you doing there? Why were you not clocking 100%? Oh, okay, I was on leave. Fine. That kind of thing. But otherwise, 100% of your time goes to your clients' utilization. So where then would the individuals have the time? Well, you can always say that they will expect us to do evening times, weekends, but more often than not, if IT, for example, where I was from, I remember my evenings were working, my weekends at times were working. So other than that, I'll probably be tired. I just wanted my rest or family time, quality time with my family. So chances are there's very little time or none at all for individuals to really develop themselves on the job. And that was what I felt the conclusion I've gotten. So now, after having known that, what actions can be taken? And this is where I proposition on how to really future tweak your talent development in any organization. Because like I said just now, typically individuals are hired for 100% of the current role. And it makes sense, of course. Obviously, it makes sense because that's what they are being paid for to do, and they are being actually delivering for the clients of the company. Makes sense. But there should be certain tweaks in the organization, in each and every role in the organization, such that the current role represents perhaps a 95%, and a future aspired role should represent the additional gap, 5% maybe. And that can actually allow individuals, your staff, time to actually be picking up the skills, be picking up on the experience that they require for the next role. And the arbitrary example here that I use, 5%, actually equates to, let's just use 40-hour week as an example. 5% equals to about 2 hours, 2 hours per week. So essentially in a month, that's 8 hours per month, 1 day. So technically, individuals would have 1 day within that month to pick up skills, whether it's through learning management systems to pick up skills, or could be also on the job training, job shadowing with project managers. And this is formal, yeah? It is within the formal gambit of the organization, and the process in the organization is documented, okay? So ultimately, it is because it is documented, people can actually pick up and say, what have you done in this month? What have you not done in this month? Okay. And like I said, 5% and 95% is just an example. You could have it more, you could have it less. But the notion is that there should be certain time leeway given for each and every role in the organization. It shouldn't be 100% for obvious reasons. And there should be two things that happen. Number one, very important, because of the fact that it is already documented in the system, manager and individual staff should have regular discussions in terms of where the individual is going. And of course, if it is one or two individuals within your team, it's easier to have much regular. If it is a 500 team in the organization that you have, then it may be a little bit more far apart, but the key is there should be regular discussions, even if it means, you met your staff at the corridor and you just say, hey, I heard that you actually job shadow with the project manager yesterday. And you know what? It was a good feedback from the project manager, from the stakeholders. It could be as simple and informal as that. But what happened is that the manager actually showed that he or she has knowledge of what is going on, and the staff would probably report upwards as well and say, probably yesterday I went on this particular regular review meetings, my monthly review meetings, project review meetings with these stakeholders, and it was very good. So there is a gist for discussion between manager and the staff. And hence this really builds communication rather than you picked up whatever it is at the end of the year and try to remember what have we done. So chances are you probably forget. Both sides. It's not the fault of the manager nor the staff, but it's just memory is limited, by the way, right? So regular discussions can be actually taken formally or informally. But of course, it would be good if it is formal, such as it's also documented. But the other angle is, the second angle is, it is complete documentations, which means if it is a formal setting, if it is a small team, 1 or 2 members, it could be regular meetings, huddles, every Friday, for example. What have we done for the week? What have you done for the week in terms of learning, in terms of your aspiration, in terms of taking it forward? Yeah, such that Obviously, the other discussion will definitely be on the job. What have you done for this week? What could have been done better, and what could be improved better, and things like that. But over and on top of that, discussion should go into future roles as well. And it should be documented such that, again, at the end of the year, there is documented inputs as to what has been discussed. Not just for certain periods of time which you remember, but regular January, February, we had a discussion. If it is weekly, even better. If it is monthly, you still have 12 months worth of discussion materials. Yes? And ultimately, with this, just imagine one thing. Had Sonia had this kind of a tweak within the organization, for the following year appraisal, what would have been Sonia's circumstances when she tries to seek the new blessing? Obviously, does she have the skills? Yes, because in the course of every month, she has a day to pick up additional skills, formally, let's say project management skills, PMP, maybe not the full certification, but at least in terms of certain modules within PMP, for example, and project management best practices and whatever not. Experience? Yes, she did, because she went on job shadowing, tagging along with actual project managers, her teammates, that she actually gotten insights as to how to run review meetings, how to engage with stakeholders, how to, the kind of typical day in the life of a project manager. Let's say if there's firefighting, even better, because that's when people typically learn much, much more on the job when you're firefighting. But this will be over and on top of her current role at 95%. So the 5% she would have spent getting the skills, getting the experience within that year. And obviously then she would fulfill the criteria for the new role. The new manager would be most happy to welcome her. And obviously, because she has been tagging along, if it is the PM himself or herself, they will be most happy because Sonia would have been tagged along enough. Yeah, visibility would be there. Okay, so in an essence, in a nutshell, as you can see, talent development then lends itself to sustainability of individual staff in the organization, leading to staff happiness, which means at the end of the day, if they're able to rotate internally, simple equation, yeah, if they're able to find what they are aspiring for, the job that they're aspiring for internally, then why would they want to leave the organization and find alternatives, right? They can actually be most willing, the managers will be most willing to give opportunities to internal staff. But had it been a year ago, the Sonia a year ago, technically speaking, it is the right decision because she does not have the skills, she does not have the experience. So technically speaking, really, Joe's intention was not to set her up for failure because she had a streak of extraordinary years in her role. Why set her up for failure, right? And that brings me to this particular model, which I developed in my 18 odd years of HR practitioner experiences. Two elements really to actually create staff happiness. One is the external talents that you want to bring in, and that's the other webinar that I have with Spendless Academy, how to actually curb staff turnover by creating cultural affinity. That talks more on the external talents, but this talent development is really more for internal staff. And this too, once you have taken care of your external talent, once you have taken care of your internal staff, it naturally, very naturally will lead to staff happiness. And when staff are happy, this cyclical notion comes in. When staff are happier, they will be so happy to delivering for their customers, your customers, such that you have happier or more abundance of customers. And when you have more customers, obviously, then you have better business results. Isn't that not? And it's a cyclical motion, because at the end of the day, if you stop doing it, and that's when this cycle will actually stop. Again, it makes sense. It's always in cyclical. And once you have this, then this is where you have that cultural affinity, a positive cultural affinity in the organization. Very simple. If I have the opportunities internally in my company now, why should I leave? My boss knows what I'm doing, has visibility what I'm doing. I have very close relationship with my management team, my team members. Everyone knows the direction of the organization, my team, and all. Why should I leave? And one more thing, and I always say that this is a litmus test for organization. When you have positive cultural affinity, the litmus test for individual staff would be whenever people come knocking on their doors, it wouldn't be how much more you can pay me, but the question would probably be, may I know how's the culture of this company? May I know how's the team like? May I know how's the manager like? Is it very open communications? Is it this? Is it that? All from a cultural angle. And if you try to beat dollars and cents, very simple, you just counter offer, isn't it? They counter you, they got an offer of $2,000. Okay, I'm going to counter that. I'm going to give 2,000, and probably you stay. Give you a promotion. Simple to counter. But if it is cultural differences, how is that going to be possible? If external organizations are not so positively cultured, so to speak, as your current organization, then why would the staff leave? Because when they compare apple to apple, it's like, hey, I wouldn't probably have a good boss like this. I wouldn't have good team members. I wouldn't have a team where the organization where they're so positive, right? So the competition then is going to be very difficult to actually match your company from a cultural perspective. And that's where I coined this term as well, CASH, cultural affinity for staff happiness. It spells cash coincidentally, so it's good. And as you can see, CA, there's a reciprocal arrow to SH. Again, it's reciprocal because at the end of the day, if you really think about it, is it going to be cultural affinity? You have cultural affinity first, positive cultural affinity first, and then staff happiness happens? Or is it the case of, I think maybe staff happiness, you have staff happiness first, then you have positive cultural affinity? It's like a chicken and egg argument, isn't it? Which one comes first? And there's really no right or wrong answer. But suffice for me to say that both of them needs to be in existence in order for the positivity to be in your company. Okay? And I would like to borrow this quote from a mentor of mine, Sir Richard Branson, someone whom I look up to, and this is very, very apt. Clients do not come first. Your employees comes first. Because if you took care of your employees, they will in turn take care of your clients. Again, it's a simple equation, isn't it? It's not to say that you take care of your clients and forget about your staff. Don't care about your staff. Anything to do with the clients is always right. And you do that, probably can survive a bit, but not in the long term. The ideal setup, after going through all the best practices, after interviewing key business leaders and HR leaders, I've come to this conclusion. This is the best ideal setup for talent development. No doubt, many companies would have this, but it's just that there are certain missing links, I feel, that is not taken care of. Hence, that's why staff unhappiness has always been there. Staff turnover has always been there. It is something that has not been curbed. And the key thing is not so much monetary requirements from individuals. It's always about career growth and talent development. So the ideal setup is this tree: manager, staff, and talent development function. And this one, it's in existence. The talent development function, every year they will refresh and say, okay, last year for whatever that has not been completed is going to be refreshed this year into this one individual. Oh, this one individual had a change of role last year. So, okay, now the new profile, the new profile of this particular person is going to be pushed through the LMS to this individual. And hence, that's how they actually ensure completeness of the courses. If you remember just now, a tick in the box, remember? They would be required to actually complete, the syllabus and whatever not, and then within the system is a tick in the box. The system allows you to print PDF or to actually save the copy and all for safekeeping, but that's what this function does, ensure completion of courses. And ultimately, this is where I also proposition, because of the fact now that there is going to be additional inputs, additional gist for discussion between managers and staff, there should be much, much more elements that both parties can actually speak on and communicate to each other in terms of not just deliverables for current role, obviously, but also for future roles. So there should be an eye at the back of both minds to say, hey, how is this individual staff doing in terms of that future role? In the mind of the staff, the manager should be also, thinking about that. Hey, if anything were to come out in between, not just at the end of the year, anything that comes out in between, hopefully my boss will come down and share that with me. Or when I put up my hands, it could be something that I can bring to discuss. Yes? So ongoing future readiness discussions. And nowadays, when in the new norm, everyone is working from home, the new norm, everyone is talking about the fact that we shouldn't be actually having appraisal discussions at the end of the year. We should be having much, much more regular discussions. Whether it is completion of tasks at the end of the day, at the end of the week, or pat on the back, job well done for whatever it is, there should be more regular ongoing discussions. And the other third party, or the other third task that completes this is really, well, for the lack of a better word, I call it policing. Because a lot of times I tend to believe that talent development function merely actually does the first, ensure completeness of courses, but rather they would not do as much the policing in terms of, hey, Mr. Manager, you have not had these discussions with your boss or rather with your staff. You should probably be having that discussion, because it's not documented in the system. Okay, so the talent development function should play a more active role in this equation in order for this ideal setup to come in. So the two key things that should be tweaked further is these two. The policing function of talent development function, as well as the ongoing constant and open communications with the staff. And notwithstanding, goes without saying, whatever discussion should be documented, because this is the gist, this forms the gist for further discussion at the end of the year. No one can remember everything. That's the fact. That's the reality. And even if you have one staff at this point in time, something that happens for this one staff in January, you tend to forget it at the end of the year in December for this one staff. What he or she has done well or could have improved further and whatever not in the course of 1 year for one staff. Just imagine if you have 100, 500 staff, bound to forget. So complete documentation goes without saying, it must be there, such that whenever certain persons or certain individual request to access the P file, the personal file of individual, is always updated. What discussion has taken place and when, or agreements that has taken place. Okay? So with this, ultimately, this should be the key takeaways that I would like to offer. And I do admit one thing. This sharing with Spanner's Academies is an hour, and there's only so much that we can actually do in an hour. In fact, this system will actually stop me from further presenting at 12:55 p.m. So this will cut off. Okay, so hence there's only so much I can squeeze into this, maybe 60 minutes, maybe 45 minutes or so. If there's question, maybe buffer for 10 minutes. So there's only so much I can do, but these are the key takeaways that I would like to offer. Talent development is not a training attended, tick, 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 tick in the LMS. It is not system updated. It is not, okay, certificate has been printed out by the individual, hence completed, all good. No, it is not just that. It is not just that. It has much, much more than that, as I've shared just now. It should be something that is, continuous and an ongoing process. Okay, that discussions, it should be the start of conversations between managers and staff into something that retains and sustains the individual. And I think you have actually heard me saying this many times. It is inputs for what I call constant and open communication. CNOC, I call it. Constant and open communications. Constant because regularly, you know, in a regular basis, you can have these conversations. Even like I said, it's informal conversation, corridor conversation in the pantry or whatever, because you have knowledge of what's happening. In the past, in Sonia's case just now, he or she probably, or the manager probably did not have knowledge of what's happening with regards to completion of training and development. So in this case, then there should be knowledge. There should be constant and open communication. And ultimately, this is where I also proposition TD, talent development professionals, should play a more active policing role in this cycle, in this equation, such that they should be actually be the gatekeeper intervention to say, hey, have you done this, Mr. Manager? Have you done this? Document into system. Because if each and every individual should have a monthly schedule of things taking place with regards to such conversation, then it should be having a particular notation in the system. If there's none, talent development professionals should actually play that role. Even if it is not individually the individual, the TD individual, talent development individual, manually actually nudge the manager, it should be at least a notification from the LMS to nudge the manager. Hey, your staff, for this particular staff, you have not had your conversation, perhaps you should schedule one now. You want to schedule? Something like that. Okay? So that's the tweak that should be there. And like I said, at the end of the day, there's only so much I can share within this hour on webinars with Spanner's Academy. I do have additional sessions outside of Spanner's Academy if it so resonates with you, because I know different organizations are at different stages of implementing certain other transformation or another, whether it's HR transformation, business transformation, or any kind of transformation. So I do have this particular free workshop on how to start, because you might also be wondering like, hey, my circumstances is a little bit different, Mike. How do I start? How do I, come in? How do I intervene? How do I say, perhaps I should start this first? How should I start that? This free workshop will actually be addressing that. If you wish to scan this QR code, the next session is on the 28th of September from 2 p.m. onwards. I'll buffer it for 2 hours, but it could go lesser than 2 hours. It could go more than 2 hours if it's needed. So I'm willing to actually, set this time. It's free for you, available for you to discuss. Come prepared with circumstances that you would like answers to, because I can tell you each individual organization's circumstances and environment are very unique and very different. And it has to be tweaked to work for you. There's no one remedy and works for everything. works for all. Okay, so do feel free to scan this. If you wish to share this as well, by all means, but obviously whoever that you share it to might not have a background of what has been discussed here today, then they may be wondering, why are you sending me this? But if they wish to, by all means, ask them to join. Okay, so that's my last slide. Any questions at this point in time? Anything you want to bring up at all? Do feel free to share observations, comments, or any questions if you wish to.
I have just one question.
Sure, please. Jimin.
Yeah, because I came in late, so I do not know the first part. Okay, never mind. Based on your experience, this TD position is a third-party outsourced function, or it should be an in-house staff, which perhaps I guess is under the HR department?
That's right. Most of the time it is. If I hear you correctly, you're asking whether they should be outsourced or they should be an internal. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I can say that most often than not, the circumstances that I've seen with my clients, most of them are in-house, which means they are part of HR, typically, part of learning and development, typically. But you may, for whatever reasons, like I said just now, the uniqueness of your circumstances and whatever not, if based on that you find that it's better to outsource, then it can be, but then you might lose the fact that, unless you actually put certain SLA service level to it and say, hey, at certain point in time, you should be doing this and whatever not. So that this person, this third party person should still play that policing part. Or, like I said, TD professional here could mean a system, could mean an individual. It depends. Okay? Because if it is just a system purely that actually resides in your system provider's server, say for example, that actually kicks in and every now and then with things like, okay, you're supposed to actually complete this learning module and whatever not, please complete it. And that's it, If it is a system, then the system should be doing much, much more alerting managers, alerting the staff for communications and all. It could. But then again, ultimately, I know many organizations tend to also lump the TD function into learning and development, which means the individual will actually be sourcing for course materials, course syllabus from training provider for the company, or probably do arrangements in terms of in-house trainings. If they have a training rooms or whatever availability, they do all those other than just the talent development policing work, so to speak. So most of them are in-house, to answer your question. Okay,
good. So I guess that maybe the bulk of your consultancy work will be set up a system for the company, set up a TD system for the company, and also training the TD staff.
It depends on the differences in companies. If there is really none, then I guess it might be easier to start from ground zero. Then it may be easier to just draw on a blank piece of paper. But if you say that, hey, Mike, I have this particular thing and interdependencies here, our organization has been a merger and acquisition with another company and whatever not, we have to actually follow their systems. How do we do this? Then it becomes something that probably we need to sit down and see how best we need to integrate. But the key would still be what's on your so-called company direction, because all this, I will actually tell you one thing, it starts from you, from the organization. What's the vision, mission, and purpose of the company? Because you cannot actually have, whatever that we come up here, the transformation that comes up here that actually goes in different tangent of the purpose and of your company, isn't it? The direction is different, cannot be. So the starting point is really from there. And it's driven down to your individual team, whether it's sales team, marketing team, support team, and whatever not. Hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Yes, right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem. Do feel free to come in on the 28th. once you register, you probably get an email as to what are some of the things you can prepare. If it is not confidential, do come prepared with some of the things that is top of mind at this point in time, and say, hey, perhaps I can actually run it by, during the session and say, how can we start? At least it is something that you can actually start and say, hey, if I started this one, no problem. It can actually, it's a journey, by the way. It's not going to be something that happens in a month and we're done. Because anything that does with culture is going to be a little bit difficult and complex. I won't say it's difficult per se, but it's complex. And a lot of interdependencies within departments. Okay?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Wherever you are, stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.